Prepared. All right, thank you everyone for coming, and I will turn it over to tonight's presenters, Bill Lanning and Sarah Lundy.
Thanks, Kathy. I'm going to try to share my screen here for the presentation. Okay, can everybody see that? Great. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening to walk through our Cathedral Village project. Our learning objectives tonight are going to be looking at the application of trauma-informed design tools within an affordable and permanent supportive housing environment, the incorporation of sustainability to achieve Earth Advantage Platinum certification within a restricted budget, a focus on the 3 essential pillars to center the health and well-being of the residents, and lessons learned from designing during a global pandemic. For quick introductions, I'm Bill Lanning, Principal at MWA Architects. I was the PIC and Project Manager on Cathedral Village and was involved from the initial funding application through Certificate of Occupancy. I did my best to stay out of the way and let Sarah and others on the project team work their magic.
Sorry, I'm Sarah Lundy. I was the project architect for Cathedral Village. I started with schematic design and continued through the completion of construction.
And now you see what happens when you let me drive the presentation. So I'll try to keep up this time. All right, MWA has offices in Portland and San Francisco with a focus on serving the essential needs of communities. The firm was founded on the principles that public housing and funded projects should be designed better than market rate projects. Our staff rallies around this type of work, knowing the impact that it can have within our neighborhoods. Like every project, there were several people involved in its success. The owner-operator is Catholic Charities of Oregon, who worked with Related Northwest as the developer of the project. It was funded in part through the Portland Housing Bureau Metro Grant, along with 4% low-income housing tax credits. The contractor was LMC Construction, who joined the project during design through the construction management general contractor process. The project is focused on providing housing for residents who earn between 30 and 60% the area's median income. There's on-site resident support services, which are provided through direct case management. Additional project amenities include collaboration with Vibe of Portland to provide an on-site music education and a recording studio, a separate teen lounge to provide older kids with a space of their own, a large community room with indoor-outdoor connection to the exterior plaza space, an outdoor natural play area with cooking and kitchen space.
All right, so to get into the site, the project site is located on the industrial edge of the St. John's neighborhood in Portland, Oregon. Just south of the St. John's Bridge and down the hill from the St. John's Town Center, the site's previous use was in support of the active rail line that borders the site's western property line. Cathedral Park is just 1 block to the north, and grocery stores, schools, and the local library and various bus lines are within easy walking distance. The closest access to the Willamette River is via North Burlington, the street bordering the south side of the site. This street connects to a waterfront trail that then connects back to Cathedral Park. Buildings in the immediate vicinity of the site include both industrial and residential uses, with a community garden 2 blocks away and the City of Portland's Water Pollution Control Laboratory across the train tracks. The site afforded great opportunities as well as some challenges. Next slide, Bill. So the main challenge of the site is clearly the railroad line that's very active and borders that western edge. Our response to that was to step back the massing and kind of hold that street edge instead and create a sunny courtyard with views to the Willamette, Forest Park, and the St. John's Bridge. The courtyard is then buffered from the rail line with parking, and then we're again holding those 3 street edges. With such a big site, we ended up with a very large massing and quite long. Because of this, we chose to separate the massing into an L to the south and a bar to the north. And we did this with the building main entrance and lobby. This big break in the massing at the lobby provides transparency and connection between the two massings while visually linking the courtyard to the street. The end of the L massing kinks to the north to provide more separation between the street and the units, as well as provide additional landscaping and acoustic remediation from the rail line. Our final move was to further split the massing, leaving the corner piece of the bar to the north as a unique 3/1 element, while we added a strong horizontal datum at the third floor line of the rest of the bar and the L, pretty much splitting it in half, top and bottom. Adding the train car inspired bays in contrasting materials breaks up the facade and provides rhythm, texture, scale, and character to the building, as well as additional floor spaces for units. Next slide. So these materials that we use can be seen here. The community design standards, the acoustic requirements of the site, and the historical and physical context of the site all played a large role in the material choices for this project. The community design standards allowed for a maximum of only 10% of the facade to be fiber cement. So we limited that material to just under and above the windows. So the choice of brick does triple duty. Not only does it meet the community design standards material requirements, it also provides much needed acoustic remediation from the rail line, as well as identifies with a strong part of Portland's architectural history, the use of brick. We took a panelized approach to the brick, which eliminated steel ledgers at window heads. The brick jambs at the windows provide depth and shadow, as well as added a vertical element to this very horizontal composition. The box red metal panel siding also satisfies the community design standards, as well as references the rail line shipping containers that pass the site daily. The panel texture adds another vertical element, as well as depth of scale to the overall massing. All right, back to you, Bill.
Okay, well, starting with at the ground floor, the client wanted to limit the entry and exit points to the building. And with this, we chose to focus the primary activities, the ground floor, to the intersection of Crawford Street and Salem Avenue at the northwest corner of the site. Like a number of projects, there's the public face with the parking tucked behind the building. The location of the site is with the location of the site with the available exterior amenities and views led us to create a transitional lobby area that served as a pinwheel with a connection to the neighborhoods to the north, community and teen spaces to the east, outdoor amenities and parking to the south, and resident services opportunities to the west. With the limited physical connections, we provided visual connection to the neighborhood through glazing at focal gathering points within the building. To meet the project needs, it was necessary to provide apartments at the ground floor instead of creating a full commercial space. The challenge that this brings is making residents feel comfortable when their home is directly next to a public sidewalk. We're able to set these homes back from the sidewalk at Crawford, the busiest street face, and buffer them with stormwater planting areas. The topography also aids this as the site slopes down from the building entry and common areas as you travel around the building. The upper three floors are consistent in layout, and they're organized around the elevator lobby, which has direct access to the common laundry areas, with ample seating and views to both the north and the south. To maintain a visual connection and introduce light into the corridor, there's a second common sitting area at the bend in the northeast corner of the building. These common spaces allow a resident to preview the space and decide if they want to engage with other residents, if others are enjoying them. The apartments range from studio to 3-bedroom in size and are organized in plan to allow for a regular rhythm and pattern in the exterior facade. Intermixed are type A accessible apartments and apartments that support residents with enhanced audiovisual devices. Living spaces within the homes are arranged to allow for ample views to Forest Park, the St. John's Bridge, and the surrounding neighborhood.
So for sustainability, we had a tight budget to start with. So the owner wanted to make sure that all money invested into sustainability for the project directly benefited the building's residents. The comfort of the residents was prioritized, and in conjunction with an efficiency approach that reduced energy and water on water consumption, we were able to achieve Earth Advantage Platinum. The passive strategies that we implemented included maximizing solar access and views through the building massing, creating long, narrow units to allow for more operable windows and thus access to daylight and fresh air, and bulking up the envelope where needed to provide acoustic remediation of the adjacent rail line and protect the acoustic comfort of the residents, and also the use of native and drought-resistant landscaping to reduce water consumption. Next slide, please, Bill. So the sustainability highlights include the unexpected discovery of a brownfield on-site and its remediation, installing the most efficient mechanical system we could afford, and providing MERV 13 air filters to protect residents from smoke events. This was triggered because during our design process, the 2020 Clackamas River Corridor wildfire affected Portland's air quality. The AQI was over 500 in certain areas, and the owner wanted to make sure that residents were safe inside their units in such an emergency. High efficiency versions of the electrical and plumbing systems were provided, and the project team was able to secure a grant to install PV so that the project could contribute back to the grid and benefit from those credits. All right, next page, please, Bill. Similar to our approach to sustainability, we look to incorporate trauma-informed design in a way that would maximize impact on the residents while meeting the client's budget. Trauma-informed design benefits all, but especially people who are in need of permanent supportive housing services, which this project does provide. I think believe we've got 8 units in the project, as well as on-site services. We focused on design elements that reinforce comfort, community, and choice for the residents. These include identity anchors, which work to connect people and build community, nested layers, which offer flexibility and choice while sharing the building's common spaces, and sensory boundaries, which work to calm the nervous system and bring elements of the natural environment into the building to provide comfort. We'll describe how these elements were incorporated into the building design as we walk you through photos of the building's exterior and interior.
And starting at the exterior and the main entry, we're going to take a few minutes to walk around the exterior of the building. As previously touched on, the entry lobby is seen as a transitional space from the north to the south side of the building. It was important that this visual transparency be maintained at all 4 levels so that residents can identify with the space, whether they're inside or outside. The client chose to introduce art at the exterior through the incorporation of murals. We were able to picture frame these elements within the facade, which makes them reflect art hung on a wall, with influences of the adjacent Cathedral Park and its annual jazz festival.
So for the trauma-informed design elements present in this image, the transparency of the entry is welcoming and allows residents to observe from the outside what's happening inside, which contributes to resident safety. The shelter of the entry canopy acts as a sensory boundary, creating a gentle transition between indoors and outdoors. The wood at the canopy soffit and the brick at the entry walls both continue from exterior to interior, creating texture, patterning, and warmth. The material choices, along with the landscaping at the entry, create a calming sensory boundary when entering the building. The exterior murals are an identity anchor for the community and the residents, providing a unique element that acts as an icebreaker and speaks about the neighborhood context and the presence of vibe of Portland within the building. Right, back to you, Bill.
All right. At the entry corner, we can get a good visualization of how we chose to reflect the building along with the residentially focused wings. The ground floor at the corner contains the primary resident service areas and is set back from the upper floors to provide covered outdoor seating and allow the floors above to serve as a break between the Crawford Street and Salem Avenue wings. This is the high point of the site with both streets sloping away. This, along with the landscape buffers along Crawford, help to provide visual separation between the inside and outside adjacent to the apartments. The project was designed, as Sarah mentioned previously, to meet the City of Portland community design standards. which is a process that allows a project to go through standard planning review and approval rather than to the design commission. The most challenging aspects of these standard requirements is generally for the base and cornice. We were able to work with the city of Portland to establish a base that varied in height and allowed the use of poured concrete due to the site grades. And we also incorporated an inverted cornice where the primary facade of that cornice recedes instead of extends for a more modern aesthetic.
The covered benches at the most prominent corner of the building, which is shown, allow for residents to wait for rides in comfort, and they also offer a more solitary or quieter outdoor seating option to the main courtyard.
And by orienting the building in a C configuration, we were able to place the short ends of the building closest to the rail tracks. The bends within the building floor plan help to acoustically mitigate the sound off the exterior walls better than if they were flat planes. You can start to see the design connection in the vertical treatment of the building with the double stacked rail cars. The exterior materials maintain a cohesive facade, while the midpoint break in the building allows these materials to shift in a way that mimic different cars stacked onto each other.
So again, the acoustic remediation of the rail line maintains the comfort and health of the residents. And those concrete planters, as Bill mentioned, form a sensory boundary between the ground floor units and the street, providing some visual relief from both the exterior side and the interior of the units. Right, back to you, Bill.
Yeah. Then heading to the back of the building, the large community room at the ground floor serves as an interior and exterior transition to the resident plaza and playground. With the parking level at a much lower grade than the building, the site circulation serves as a buffer between the play area and other amenity spaces. Universal design practices were incorporated to create an accessible shared courtyard, children's playground with fairy garden, and barbecue area. While sometimes grading can impact site circulation in a negative way, here it actually provided us with an opportunity to allow for different levels of outdoor space along the circulation path.
And again, that canopy at the rear entry to the courtyard acts as a gentle transition between indoors and outdoors, while also introducing the wood ceiling from the lobby to the exterior of the building. The texture and warmth of the brick at the entry wall is carried to the interior as well, and landscaping buffers adjacent ground floor units from the entry. The flexibility and choice offered by different seating arrangements in the courtyard allow for residents to engage as comfortably as they want to be. So moving to the interior of the building, flanking the exterior courtyard, the community room is kind of the hearth of the project. It features a fully accessible kitchen, choice of seating options and areas, and ample access to daylight and views to Forest Park and the St. John's Bridge. Its flexible layout allows for anything from quiet reading to a community meeting or family meal to a resident music performance to take place. The transparency from indoors to outdoors allow residents to observe who is occupying the space prior to entering, which is a safety element. Next slide, please, Bill. Partnering with the local nonprofit Vibe of Portland, Cathedral Village incorporates access to musical education experiences at Vibe's first on-site music studio, where instructors help children play and record music. In addition, a teen lounge was provided as a space for older children to gather, while still offering transparency visually to the corridor and the adjacent music studio. Items such as the foosball table, record player, and board games provide icebreaker elements that help build community. In both the music studio and the teen lounge, warmth and comfort is brought to the space through the use of acoustic wool felt ceiling baffles, as well as ample daylight. Next slide, please. The main entry lobby connects that L and bar of the massing to each other, as well as the courtyard to the street. The corridor widens at the community room entry to allow for the doors to swing in the direction of egress, but also to widen views to the entry and create a less cramped entry. The texture and warmth of the brick walls and the wood acoustic ceiling extend from outdoors to the inside, calming the active lobby space, along with providing ample daylight and views to the entryway landscaping. As you can see, pets are allowed in the building for the residents' comfort, but also incidentally acts as a community building element. Everybody wants to meet the canine residents at Cathedral Village, and they're a great icebreaker element. Next slide, please. So the resident services component of the project provides a conference room and management offices, as well as a social services office across the hall. While the enclosed waiting room provides auditory privacy and separation, the fact that it's so visually porous provides safety and visual connection to the lobby and street, as well as the main entry. And this is for residents as well as staff. Multiple exits account for cases of emergency, and it provides safety to both staff and residents as well. The textures of the materials used on the finishes, such as the wood at the reception desk and the carpet with the semi-organic pattern, soften up the space and make it calming and welcoming. Next slide, please. Unit interiors, these were designed to maximize living space as well as provide a good amount of storage for residents. Large windows bring daylight into the space and offer views out to the neighborhood. And the interior finishes were selected not only for their durability and easy maintenance, but also for their texture and soft color palette. So that patterning and that softness of the color adds to the overall calming and comfortable feeling of the units. And the spacious kitchens kind of act as the hearth for each space. Next slide, Bill.
Yeah, so we're getting to the lessons learned. And every project provides the opportunity for us to learn from things that didn't quite go the way we planned. On Cathedral Village, we faced a few that could not have been anticipated when we started. And as we know, COVID happened. We were in the DD phase when we moved our workspace from the office to our homes. Up until that time, our housing studio had not collaborated in a remote environment. We quickly started to research ways to effectively do this, like a lot of other people. And you can imagine this was done by trial and error for a big part. There were definitely bumps along the way, but we were able to incorporate the Miro application into our work, which has been a great design collaboration tool that we've been using even after returning to the office. We also realized that communication and internal meetings had to be a lot more intentional, as there wasn't the opportunity to preview if someone was busy right before engaging with them on a project. Directly tied to the project site and construction, we also learned, as Sarah mentioned about the brownfield earlier, that there is a need for additional below-grade site investigation when developing along a waterway and a railroad. The project had the typical geotechnical investigation and report, which provided the focus of the work where the building was intended to be placed, along with areas for stormwater dispersal, which left the area adjacent to the railroad tracks largely undocumented. During excavation for below-grade utilities, the contractor encountered a large amount of organic material, which consisted of railroad ties and other debris that needed to be removed. This was an unanticipated impact to the construction budget, which used a large amount of contingency right at the beginning of the project.
Yeah, so setbacks such as this below grade and discovery of the brownfield also impacted the construction schedule. But so did the pandemic, maybe even more so. We had lots of supply chain and pricing issues due to the scarcity that the pandemic created. With the price of lumber at an all-time high and the requirement to source it within 500 miles of the site in order to meet sustainability requirements, the contractor ended up adjusting the parapet to roof truss connection without highlighting this or mentioning it to structural or MWA. Everything turned out fine, but we had to adjust air barrier details on the fly. It was a little bit of a communication breakdown as well, but we reestablished that communication just fine. Additionally, sourcing for exterior furnishings was a challenge. With outdoor furniture at an all-time kind of high in desirability, our specified fire table for the courtyard was no longer available, and we ended up with just concrete tables rather than a concrete fire pit table. But we finished the project on time, so that's what counts. Interior finishes also proved to be a challenge, and the contractor ended up fabricating the acoustic wood ceiling at the lobby and community room due to cost and timing. So they actually had one guy who kind of built the entire thing by himself. Mechanical equipment was also impacted, but we didn't realize this until our 1-year warranty walk. There was some manufacturer issues due to the pandemic and the related impacts on the factories where the equipment were produced. And so some of those units need to be replaced. And luckily, they were still definitely under warranty and it was fine. One last item, which is kind of becoming more and more of an issue, is the intense heat of summers. So we did not plan for air conditioning to be provided, but during design, the owner asked for every single unit to kind of have a portable AC device hookup installed. So that was ordered along with the windows so that there would be kind of an exhaust vent port added to each operable tiny awning window. Additionally, landscape installation happened at the peak of the summer heat for this project, and without proper irrigation and kind of those hoses installed that need to provide the additional water for plants to establish themselves, a lot of those native and drought-resistant plantings did not survive and needed to be replaced within a couple months before the final sign-off on the project. All right, back to you, Bill.
All right, well, I'm gonna say that I don't know if we stepped through our presentation faster than we thought, but we are at the end of our formal presentation and we're hoping to take questions and answers if anyone has anything. So if you have any questions, place them in the chat, that'd be great.
Are you able to see the chat?
Yes.
Okay.
I am. Yeah.
So there are no questions at all. You guys just did such a great presentation.
We're okay with no questions. It's okay.
Okay, we got somebody. We got some coming
Let's
in
see.
now.
Here's some coming in. Yeah. Yeah. First question regarding the community designs sessions with. Okay. Yeah. Utilizing the community design standards instead of going through design review and how we use those guidelines. So when this project started, the city of Portland had started to modify their community design standards. So that was an advantage to the project. And we also had familiarity with other projects. I'd say not most developers, but a lot of developers would prefer to avoid design review if they can. We've been through both processes, and with affordable housing, certainly that is a way to generally kind of speed up the development side and the design side. So utilizing lessons that we had for previous projects and just knowing a lot of the material requirements was a big step. I would say one thing that did or I would say a lesson learned that we found out as we were into design was Salem Avenue, which is in this image, it's a dead end street that fronts this primary face of the building. It's a very short street that we had to do a half street development on. And at the time we started design, we weren't considering that the community design standards actually required an entry on both Crawford and Salem. So we had designed the main entry to the building along Crawford and then ended up reworking the lobby and social resident services area to be able to incorporate a secondary entry into the lobby at the Salem Street interface.
Also, Bill, the USPS decided that that was our main street and that's our address. So rather than being like 8910 North Crawford, we became 6520 North Salem. So that happened, you know, late in design.
Next question, can you describe any info regarding how the developer came up with the unit mix? So not specifically. I mean, part of it was understanding, you know, within the affordable housing community and within the tax credit and funding market, there is a different amount of funding available depending on the number of bedrooms within the apartment. And that, along with the balance of how many apartments they were hoping to provide at this particular site, led to that balance between studios, one bedrooms, twos, and threes. There definitely was a focus in providing family housing at this property, unlike some projects that are more focused on workforce housing and implement a lot more studios and one bedroom apartments. So that was kind of the goal here, was to make sure we created enough space for family apartments. There was also actually a desire from Catholic Charities of Oregon to meet a certain percentage of bedroom sizes, which influenced that mix. Next question is, can you speak more about the panelized brick facade system, general details, installation, etc.? Sarah, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So the panelized system was great in a lot of ways. First of all, our windows could be any size that we wanted. We didn't have to have them on a brick module. We just had to account for them within the Norman brick module. Secondly, we were able to get the first kind of lower 2 floors of the building stacked on that concrete base ledger. We widened that base to catch the depth of the brick so that that concrete acted as a ledger. And then there's a ledger incorporated into the belly band at the midline of the building that spans 2 floors. So we don't need to break up that panel on the between the 3rd and 4th floor with another ledger. Additionally, it allowed us to eliminate all those headers with steel headers at the windows, which was great. The depth of the jamb did provide a challenge with the metal flashing at the belly band as well as the cornice and capturing that. There was a lot of working through flashings in the mock-up. Yeah, the panelized system also eliminated the need for a lot of vertical control joints in the panels. Most of them are under 20 feet, so we were able to create a rhythm as well as avoid unnecessary kind of marring of that brick surface. Yeah, so working with this brick was really great. The Norman brick is a nice module because it's on a foot. And yeah, looking at the window heads, we were able to have a lot of freedom. There's one thing I will add that you did not ask about, which is technically the Hardy fiber cement panel product needs to have a control joint at every floor line. With our envelope consultant from RDH, we were able to figure out a deflection joint between the 3rd and 4th floors. So we could just have one panel there rather than breaking up that small space into at the floor line and then having a panel above and below. We're able to just have one solid panel there on a deflection joint. So that was really great.
I would add too, just from a term standpoint, panelized, I'd clarify that the brick was not, that was still hand set, brick by brick. It wasn't delivered or installed as a panel itself. So when we speak about panelized in this, we're talking more about, I'd say again, containing that brick facade in distinct, panels that are then broken up by the window system and the fiber cement system. So just to clarify that.
Yes, and then also the thin, the brick at the ground floor that continues from the outside of the resident services area and then into the lobby is a thin brick, which was also set by the brick installer.
Any other questions? We got to get this to 5:45, guys.
I did think of one more thing on the unit mix piece, which as we were talking about brick, it popped into my head. With the competitive application for funding, there was a requirement on this project to have a certain percentage of, you get more points in the funding application based on a ratio of bedrooms to apartments. So the goal was to have an average of 2 bedrooms per apartment, which then equated to a balance between the number of 3-bedroom apartments versus the number of 1-bedroom and studio apartments. So that did influence the unit mix as well.
And as we were finishing up the building, residents were already moving in, during some final punch elements. So people were occupying the 4th and 3rd floor, especially those 3-bedroom units prior to us doing our final punch on the 2nd and 1st floor. So those family units were really desirable for the residents of this building.
And since we're kind of free form here, I'd also speak a little bit. So the relationship between the ownership and the developer on this project. Again, Catholic Charities of Oregon is the owner operator. They did, join with or collaborate with Related Northwest, who is a developer on the West Coast and has been very active in the Portland metro area over the last few years. Related Northwest was their primary contact on the project, and they have in-house architects as well that they use to help, during the design process on the project. So we were able to work with that team and with their architect to, work through some of the detailing, some of the material usage, as well as having someone on the project, even though this is an affordable project, that was looking out for implementing good design. He was there to be critical of decisions that we were making for value engineering that he knew would impact the end, I hate to say end product, but the building after it was constructed. So one of the things that you often see on a lot of affordable projects are white vinyl windows or tan vinyl windows. Here it was clear that it was important to be able to use a dark window frame in order to blend with the material palette that we had chosen. We also, I don't recall if you mentioned this, Sarah, because of the project location, there are windows, primarily they're located at the short end of the building, where through the acoustical report, we identified the need for triple glazed windows at those locations to enhance the acoustics and get below the sound transmission class required for that outdoor to indoor transition. The brick also helped provide a good acoustical buffer in addition to being a rated material that helps with the 1-hour exterior wall ratings.
We do have another question in the chat, it looks like.
Okay.
Can you tell us about Vibe of Portland?
Yeah, so Vibe of Portland, and I might hand off to you too, Sarah, on this. They're a local nonprofit that connected with the client early on in the project. I will let you know at the time, we actually, one of the staff members at MWA, his wife is the executive director at Vibe of Portland, but oddly enough, Related Northwest had already reached out to them as a potential partner. And that was because of that adjacency to Cathedral Park and really wanting to make a connection into the community. With the jazz festival and other things that go on there, they saw that as an element that the community certainly of St. John's certainly rallies around, and a way to engage, especially the younger residents within the building, from toddlers through teens to be able to provide that amenity to, help supplement the activity that happens on site. The project doesn't have a lot of open outdoor space for, I'd say, basketball or other activities that take up more room. So the music studio was a way to engage in a different level.
Additionally, when I was doing the 1-year warranty walk, Vibe of Portland was conducting a summer camp and using not only the music studio, but also the community room and the courtyard as kind of their grounds for their summer camp. So that was really cool to see. And it was nice to kind of give them their first physical permanent location that's just for their use in Portland. I think they were previously going to schools and kind of moving around.
Okay, I
Right.
guess we can we can justify credit now.
I think we have one more slide, Bill.
Oh, the thank you slide. That'll get us
Yeah.
to 5:45.
It is a lovely building. I as a non-architect, just looking at it, I'm like, oh, this is lovely. I wouldn't mind living here.
Yeah, and with this photo, you can see the amount of roof area because of the length of the building that was available for solar. And as Sarah said, that came in through a grant towards the end of the project. A lot of you may be familiar with adding those amenities at the very end, which does prove to be another challenge, just in terms of sequencing and the permit approval through the city of Portland after the general building permit's already been provided.
Someone's asking what your favorite design element of the project was.
Personally, I wasn't we were exploring a lot of different things, but a lot of times you look at, composition, vertical composition, and think of, splitting things like 1/3, 2/3, that sort of rhythm. But in this building, that midpoint break, I think, really works well with the movement around the building. Again, kind of that reflection of the rail and that adjacency, and just the way that the brick panelization, again, in those fields come together. I think that midpoint element is really a strong piece that divides but also unifies the building.
Yeah, and I would say that this is like the one example of that whenever people say, yeah, you don't divide things in half, I'm always like, well, but it's not an equal half and half. The base kind of extends with the slope of the site. The cornice adds height and is continuous, but is also moving in and out, and kind of those bays are providing rhythm and accent. And then I think breaking it at the corner is actually pretty important and was a really good move that contributes to that. But in addition to that, I think what I like about the project was going back and seeing it occupied and seeing residents helping each other out. And, somebody's scooter had been stolen and everyone was trying to help. It's just really great to have this project be so well invested in and have people putting brick on a building that's meant for affordable housing. I mean, yes, the community design standards said you can't use fiber cement, and also, it just really made sense to do that here. But these owners are investing in buildings that they're building to own, and they want them to last as long as possible. So it's great working on these projects with the contractor through design as well as the owner.
Well, definitely deserving of its award last year. I'm going to take this moment to segue and remind everyone that the final judging has been done for this year's awards, and the celebration and announcement will be next month. So keep an eye out for that.
Thank you, everyone, for your feedback and for coming. It's great to share this project with you.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice project.
Thank you.